Works Committee. It's September 4th, about 6:30 p.m. We're in the first floor conference room at City Hall. I'm calling the meeting to order. Let's just go around the room quick. I think we know everybody, but we'll go around anyway. So,
Lee Graff, Alderperson.
Paul Ballard, Public Works Superintendent.
Brian Giefer, Wastewater Superintendent.
oh,
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, you
Lois
did.
and Crawl, observer.
Okay.
Second McNair.
Joe Ekstead, City Engineer.
Then Kubershek, committee member.
Yeah, okay. Item 1 is to review the DPW report. I should say Joel's on vacation, Terry, so he's not here, but we got other staff filling in to keep us up to speed, hopefully.
So the report is attached. Is from engineering. I guess I could speak on a couple of highlighted topics there. The sidewalk maintenance, curb and gutter maintenance program for 2018 is underway. We're kind of finishing up the area in the east side downtown, and then some miscellaneous locations throughout the city. And then in addition to that, implemented the new timing plans on the Riverview Expressway. There were 10 intersections that were retimed, and they've been in operation for, I believe, almost 2 weeks now. And I don't know if you guys have any updates that you want to share.
Yeah, I can go through ours quick. So, like Joe said, everything's attached here, but just some points. The Parks Department has worked on doing some tree removals on our construction projects. Since our last meeting, we have finished our work on Van Buren from 10th to 8th Street, or 8th Avenue, I'm sorry. And we've also completed the underground work on High Street from 17th Avenue to 15th Avenue. We're almost actually to 14th Avenue here, but with the rain on the remainder of the week here, or last week, we kind of got backed up a little bit. But so we had some tree removals and things like that that needed to be done prior to construction that were inside our construction limits. We also started this last week the 10th Street sidewalk project from Grove to virtually back of the old Shopko, just past Wood Avenue, and there was some removals that needed to be done, so the Parks Department helped us with that activity. There also, I believe all the animals are now gone from the zoo through the Labor Day, after the Labor Day weekend, mostly just because the majority of our seasonal employees are now back to school this week here. As far as our street department staff, continue to go through catch basins that are showing up due to the large amount of rains and things like that. We completed our chip seal program. For the most part, the majority of our chip sealing was north of Peach Street, from the courthouse all the way over to Highway 54. And then on the west side, we were down in the avenues north of Gainer Avenue. Try to take a little bit of a different approach the last 2 years and work out neighborhoods instead of, doing 4 blocks here and 4 blocks there. And it ended up being extremely effective. Normally what we do in 3 days, we did in 2.5 days. Because there was less moving around and stuff like that, we were pretty much chip sealing the whole time. So probably continue to take a look at that. Like I said, we've completed the underground on 7th to 10th, and then also the 2 blocks on Van Buren, and then we've completed 3 blocks of the 3rd High Street project. The contractor is in town and has all of the concrete completed on High Street from 7th to 10th. And for the most part, maybe like a half a day's worth of work left on Van Buren, so then we'll be able to start the restoration on those 2 projects and try to get them paved, by the end of the month at the latest, weather permitting. So, and then same thing, they're going to be the same contractor that's over on the 10th Street sidewalk project. So, continuing to move along. Have a lot of asphalt patches to do yet. Probably the middle of the month we'll be starting our concrete pavement patches on A Street and the expressway from the high temperature blow-ups that we've had this year. I think we're probably pushing like 8 or 9 patches out in those locations that we gotta do. So that work will start here soon also.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for anybody or anything? With that, we can go to item 2, review the wastewater engineering services costs associated with changes in conditions of the West Side Lift Station project.
So what you have, I think in your packet, you should have these two things from Strand Associates. I believe you do. Those are in there. Basically, now this is Strand Engineering, our design engineer on this project, coming back to us and asking for a change to the contract to cover the costs associated with the Myron change order that you guys approved, I think, in June. So it's kind of laid out there on the second page, some different things that they did during that time when there was essentially no physical work being done. They were reviewing different proposals from Myron and Michaels. They were trying to re-engineer the soil retention system. There was several things they were doing during that time. And they've come back with asking for an amendment to the contract to $24,346. And according to the cover letter here, it's kind of, this is the lead engineer, Paul Dreiss. What he says here is the first option, there's 2 options we can do. The first option would be to amend the contract. We can, so we can cover what they're asking for, or the second option would be kind of table this for now until the project is complete and consider taking action at that time. Which is, I think Joe and myself feel that's the better option of the 2. First of all, because there could be other things that come up on the project, and I think it'd be better to address it all at the end than have possible several change orders as we go. The other reason I think we should wait on this is because I think Joe and I might be able to sit down with Paul and negotiate some of these fees a little bit. You know, when Myron came back with their first change order, I think it was $350,000. We called him and said, let's go through this. Do we really have to charge rental rates on this equipment that was just sitting here? Essentially just kind of called him out on some of the things, and it came down to $200,000. So I think there's wiggle room with these things. I don't know if there's as much with Strand because these do look like they're hard costs for time, but you know, I know Joe and I both kind of felt that some of the reasons for this change order could possibly be Strand's fault a little bit. The reason for the change order was the fact that the soil borings didn't show there was rock where there's rock. So there was a change order for rock excavation and redesigning the soil retention system. Well, it was sort of Strand's job to develop a soil and rock profile of the site, you know, and if they didn't feel confident that the borings they had were going to give them an accurate picture, they probably should have advised us to take more borings, I guess is our thought, you know. So, you know, Joe and I feel they maybe should have a little bit of skin in that game and maybe have to eat some of those costs. That's a conversation we still have to have with them. But, you know, I think it's worth tabling and at least having the conversation with them. You know, it's tough. If the soil borings would have been correct, you know, the bids would have been higher, we would have known there was rock there, we would have paid for the rock excavation, but we wouldn't have had this cost, and we wouldn't have had some of Myron's delayed costs. You know, so far Myron, Strand, and the city have all experienced this issue, but we're the only one that's paid for anything. You know, so I think they might be, you know, we should bring them to the table and call them on that a little bit, so.
I like your sentiment on that. So, I mean, in terms of time is of the essence, I don't know if there's any other questions that you guys have. I'll make a motion to postpone this indefinitely until, you know, especially if you're able to do your magic, I guess. Right?
Yeah, so no, I think it's worth trying anyway.
I'll second that.
Okay.
Yeah, as I looked this over, I thought that might be the better way to go anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, and who knows what else could come up, so.
Yeah, okay. Any questions? The committee will vote. All in favor, respond by aye. Aye. Opposed, ayes have it. Item 3, discuss the policy and ordinance development modifications for automated refuse and recycling services.
So
Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you.
See, Brian.
So I think this is just a continuation on where we left off in our packet. You know, you'll see the summary of what was given to you guys last month, and then Joe just went through and virtually filled in the gaps or whatever as to what he felt was accomplished last month. So where there's green in those sections, he feels that that we've completed that task, I guess, is my understanding. And where it's red is where we've had discussions about it, but really didn't come to a consensus on anything or completed that task. I don't know if you guys feel the same on that, or if there's some areas that we have as green that you'd like to go back and discuss further. I know Ann is here for talking about, let's see, I believe it's on the second page under the scope of services. Right, Lee, is that where you wanted to go with that? Or?
Yep.
So it's up to you guys wherever you want to go.
Go ahead, Lee.
It's up to, I mean, I think, you know, we have an opportunity here to kind of vet that out with the townhouses. So, and I know Ann's here,
May I speak?
well,
Yeah, you can. You wanna
Okay.
come up to the table here?
Sure.
Okay.
And I'll keep it short, but the object is just to give some explanation why there is a concern. Again, I'm Lois Ann Kroll. I reside at the 1400 block of 21st Avenue South in the Colonial Charm Village condos. I own a condo there. I'm one of 18 owners. I'm here as a member of the board of directors of the association that is connected with our condos, representing the other members. And the reason I'm here is I am requesting that we either have a waiver or an exemption from the ordinance that has defined our homes as a commercial multi-unit property that comes under a different service program with the city's automated recycling program, and to be recycling program, or the automated garbage program yet to come. When the recycling program started, we never received the carts. And with the city continued to pick up our recycling in the blue bins, but we were notified that it would cease and that we were going to be on our own then for acquiring the service through some other means. The city would not be providing the service. So I would like to request that we are extremely unique. I do not believe there is another property in the city that is the footprint that we have that has individual homeowners residing there and paying the property taxes for the services that they receive. I wanted to say we have spoken to Paul and he has dealt with us. Lee Graff has also spoken with us. I have spoken with Mayor Verwink as well, seeking a compromise. On August the 28th, we were told though that our service would cease, but we've been trying to work through extensions and so on until we could come to some conclusion. On August the 28th, the city did deliver to our 18 units. We received 6 containers, and that was, we put that out as an option, that for recycling we would take 2 containers per the 3 wings of our U-shaped unit. We are between 21st Avenue South and 22nd Avenue South. Therefore, we aren't off of the regular route. We have access on both sides of the street for the automated equipment. As far as I know, it was successful. The retrieving our recycling and so on. We are looking at the future though. As you prepare to implement the automated system for the garbage as well, we would need more than just 6 containers, but we could still operate and function with fewer than 18. So at no time are we looking at that. but we are requesting that we still be considered as individual homeowners, receive the service that the city provides to other individual homeowners. And as an FYI, it's, I think, rather interesting, the new tax rolls and the property tax payment bills came out, and many of our homeowners increased, their tax amount increased, and it seemed rather specious that at the same time they would lose services that they had up to this point been receiving. So I'm asking for you to reconsider us as a special unit. There is nothing like us. We are not a multi-unit apartment house. We are not a trailer park. We are individual homeowners that happen to be in a small footprint. But there is no reason that we can't be served with the same service as the rest of the city. So, and we've cooperated to this point. The city has been picking up our blue containers on a regular basis, but all of that, this decision has to be made to either bring us into the fold, and I would be very disturbed if we find ourselves having to bring an outside source in to handle our recycling and ultimately the garbage pickup as well. If there are any questions, if you have comments, let's see.
Thad?
Yeah, thank you very much for coming down here. I haven't spoke with you at all prior to on this topic, but interestingly enough, I did do a little bit of my own research, and as far as is it the 18 units or so that are there?
18 homes.
I want to say that, and this isn't statistically significant, but I want to say that 15 out of the 18 individuals who own a portion of this, I couldn't find any evidence that there was anybody that owned other property. So this is their domicile. So you
Yes.
are actually, you're not making a profit, or at least 15 out of 18. There was 3 of them that were kind of up in the air, but this is a case where it is an apartment complex where there is an income revenue stream for someone. So it's kind of a communal operation with it being a zero lot line condo.
Correct.
And when it comes down to it, and I like this kind of resolution type, that if we can get something worked out. I think some of the concerns that may have been brought up about it would be, and this is a suggestion why we want to go to kind of more of a single stream garbage and change our operations, is to completely get away from going on private property.
Yep.
You know, it's a case where you seem very reasonable, you know, and
Yeah.
I really appreciate that. 10 years down the road, is there going to be a situation where now the parking lot is becoming degraded, and the only thing that we can suggest, because every other vehicle in that parking lot is a car, or, you know, a pickup truck, that is it the garbage truck or the recycling truck, is that the cause? And then now is there going to be conflict with that? I don't know. You know, so that's one of the things that we got to look at as being a committee as well as a governing body. But I hope we can come to a resolution. And the nice thing is that, as far as I know as well, this is one of the only zero lot line properties, so we wouldn't be creating a precedent if we had created.
And we are already, and Paul has spoken to it as well, our access to the containers there isn't a barrier to it. I mean, they can go to individual homes on the street and continue on down without having to deviate in any way. Currently, they deviate by the garbage trucks coming in on the property. Well, that would be alleviated if you implement, and when you implement, this new automated process, because there's access on the 22nd Avenue side as well as the 21st. So
I think one of the challenges too is that with it being summertime, you know, it's convenient to be able to put the carts out in the boulevard area there now. What is gonna happen when, wintertime comes?
What happens with the home?
Well, I put it in my
So-
driveway.
But I mean, I look though, when you look, you may, but that isn't true of all. And it could be, you know, that it becomes a shoveled area or whatever.
You're exactly right.
Yeah.
And that is our concern, you know, so then we have to be the ones to either contact the homeowner. But then if it's a case where there's a number of them, then your own residents or the people belonging to the association, right? What if some of them say, well, the city should be the ones plowing out the boulevard where we put that, but in reality, it should actually come from the association. You know, so then where do we draw the line with that? Because and this is what I'm not necessarily pointing blame at anything, but what I'm suggesting is that there's a lot of unknowns that are gonna potentially happen. So this might be a work in progress. This might be something that doesn't immediately happen like that. It might be something that we have to work through for the next calendar year because of snow and because of water and different things.
Well, that's
So-
why the timing is critical now, because you're in the process of, you found your failings with the program to begin with. I mean, it wasn't all working like a dream when the carts and all of this was established, and it, you know, that's the way anything new works. So there've been problems, and you correct them as you go. And then when the garbage becomes also automated, there are going to be issues with that too, I'm sure. There's always going to be the bug in the works. It just is. My hope is that we've worked well with each other in the past. And you accommodated us for a period of time, and we in turn have worked with the city that relationship should continue. I really would be very upset if we suddenly have to add on to our expenses the outsourcing through other waste disposal or recycling programs. And I don't think it's necessary. I think it can be worked out. I think that's what you're in a position to do. I don't think it's a precedent setting because it is unique. It can be defined as something extremely unique, not that the trailer park is suddenly going to be wanting to do this and the apartment house across the way is going to want to. I think it is, the uniqueness is apparent. So
Where would, I guess, like in terms of looking at this, what would be satisfactory in your opinion?
well, what we have right now for the recycling portion is going to be fine. You're dealing with mostly two people in the residence. We currently are providing outside them the two recycling carts on each of the arms of the condos, and one of that faces 22nd. No problem with the crew, should be no problem with the amount. When it comes to garbage, I think we would have to add 2 more carts perhaps. I don't know what your garbage, is it going to be the same carting system? So a family home would have 2 carts? Or they'd have 1 cart that carried everything?
I don't think that we have decided that yet, but I lied to you. It's gonna be the same structure that we did for the recycling, where it's gonna be one 96-gallon cart and or a 48-gallon cart.
Does that mean okay,
In addition to
in
the carts that
addition
you
to
have.
the one they already have, they would get another?
Yes.
So in that instance, if we had the regular number that you've given for the recycling, I would see that there might be a need for an additional one with garbage, because obviously the weekly garbage is going to accumulate more. But that kind of thing I see as workable. That's my message to you. I think it can be worked out. I don't think we fit under an umbrella where you try to do the numbers and make everything the same. I think it is unique. I think it needs to be dealt with in maybe a unique way. And it can always be undone. That's, if something doesn't work, it can be undone. But to not do anything at all and to put us in a position where we have to expend more money in order to fulfill our waste needs and so on, I think is not to the best advantage for all of us.
Mayor, did you have something?
I was just gonna seek clarification to the question, because I think when we were trying to figure out what's the ratio, right, that would be acceptable
Yeah.
from a equity standpoint across the other property tax base, it was, you have 3 units, sorry, we were talking 3.
That have
units per-
absentee owners?
No, right, they mostly are owner occupied, there's
Yeah,
3
right,
that have
right.
that strange arrangement, but there are, we were discussing a 3 unit per garbage bin, and
There's
3
18
unit per recycling then, right? So 6
So there's
bins
18,
total?
yeah, there's 18 units there right now, and they
Yeah.
have 6 recycling
We have,
containers.
right.
Yeah, okay. So I
Which
was
for
just
recycling
trying to figure out
is,
from a
works out
parity,
fine.
You're saying there may be, you have the opportunity to purchase more than what might otherwise be provided if there was a consistent ratio approved through the
Yeah.
garbage ordinance. You know, I think that's one thing that's being proposed, right, is you'd be able to buy another bin to have access to more service, basically. And so I think it's still, I think there's a compromise in the works, is what my point is.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a matter of whether or not the association finds it acceptable. The second point I quickly wanted to make was, we asked the assessor, what is this property considered for assessment purposes, right? Because he's got to look at this in one frame, you know, one box or another, and it's essentially townhouses, and that's the whole rub, is because they're assessed via townhouse designation. The ordinance provides that townhouses are excluded, right? 16th and Pepper, the new townhouses there, and then all other townhouses across the city. I'm not gonna argue they're different or the same, because I do think there are personally that are different, and you made those claims, but I would just say that the townhouse designation is what the assessor gave it, and that's what gave it we typically can't provide service via the current ordinance there. And I think there are a couple of zero lot line similarities, but again, they're not townhouses. They're not like this, where, what are they, 2 bedrooms, 2 and 3 bedrooms?
The ones facing, or the back up to 22nd Avenue South are 2-bedroom. The 2 wings that face for 21st Avenue are 3.
How much garbage how big is the dumpster right now?
I think you guys have,
We don't have a dumpster.
you don't
Well, how
have,
do you?
No. We've been getting our individual garbage picked up. And there's the rub in terms of, in the city's desire, and rightly so, not to have to go on private property, the threat of litigation and all of that type of thing. We currently have 2 different ways the garbage is picked up, but it's picked up by trucks coming into the parking area picking up.
Where would that be? Because we got this brought
What
up.
have you
on
got
right
you're
here.
looking at behind
Yeah,
me?
I got it. So right here, so this is the north building, this is the south building,
Yep.
and the west building.
Oh,
here.
okay.
This building here is their parking structures for
Yeah.
these houses here.
Okay.
So currently, these are all like fenced in patios
Right.
here. And so you see each individual sidewalk coming out, that's where they put their cans then.
No, we put them in front of our garage.
Okay.
So across the way
Across the
from
way.
us, yeah,
So either way, the truck comes,
Right.
backs into here.
right,
And they pick up the garbage here.
correct.
And then down in these 2 buildings here then? This is
Then
your other
down
2?
in the building above the arrow where you're
Yep,
pointing,
right here.
right in here are the garages. The wider
This-
one is the garages for these next 6 units.
Yeah. So this,
And they put theirs at the end of the garages.
okay.
So is
And
it,
then the 2-bedroom units, put them out on the
On
street on
22nd.
22nd.
is it?
That's all recognized, it's changing. That's
Sure.
gonna change citywide, so you need to get them out of the,
If we went to, just throwing a spitball and a deal out here because the time is of the essence as well. If we put 4 containers or X amount of containers in the upper parking lot and then 4 or X amount of containers in the lower parking lot, would the truck still be able to pick them up?
Well, so the biggest problem is, and this is what we talked about when we met with the association, is there is so much on-street parking, and it's not their fault. It's the
apartment houses, yeah.
complexes, both here and here, you know, that the street is parked pretty full, so.
On the, right, opposite days, whatever.
And so
that
you
is.
talk about six carts here, you know, you're talking about probably 20 feet that you need in order to be able to set a cart there.
How about in the parking lot where the existing garbage is being picked up?
I'm really not fond of that situation because he'd have to back into the parking lot and or back out. So you have a 36-foot wide road that has 8 feet of both sides gone. Now all of a sudden you're opening yourself up for him backing into a parked car. Garbage is one thing because you have somebody on the back as a spotter to make sure he's okay and he's paying attention to the front of the truck, and they're, you know, now you're going to a single person truck. Granted, it's got cameras on it and everything like that, you know, and that's what the discussion was. You know, the other concern initially is that of getting it to the street, you know, in the wintertime and stuff like that, and they've decided, well, we're gonna give it a shot to see if we can do it, you know, and so, cause that was the original no, we don't wanna pull it out to the street, we want it picked up where it was, you know, and so.
Yeah,
they're
everybody wants
getting-
to keep
yeah.
the same.
Yep.
But
That's not
that
gonna
is a
happen.
given
Yeah,
that it's
right.
not gonna be the same,
What-
that isn't an issue.
So the piece on 22nd Ave, that it would probably be simpler.
Yep.
Because there's less cars from the apartment complex parking on at least their side of the road. There's still a fair amount of cars that are parking on the west side of 22nd Avenue, but not so much on the east side and by their garage and or their front doors here.
Now, just hypothetically, we've got the ability to paint those curbs yellow, right?
Sure.
So,
Yeah, we can
we can have no parking zone. But what about a possibility, and again, this is one thing that we want to stay off of private property, but what if there was a location kind of by that lower garage that we were to, and everybody from all the different wings has got to bring down to the communal garbage containers, and we just go in 21st, pick up 5, 6, 7, whatever the number is, and then leave 22nd. Is that a possibility?
Yeah, I guess it's a possibility, but I think it's the situation that we were trying to get away from. You know, we don't want to go on private property to play this. Well, you put a 80,000 pound truck in my parking lot every other day for, 20 years, so now my parking lot's, that's what we were trying to get away. Granted, part of the discussion was well, they're asking for our service, so technically they're giving us permission to come onto their property. Advance does it, right? So yeah, I think it probably would be something, but
But I don't think
also,
and I don't mean to cut off, but I don't think there was a problem if the group on the west wing were to move their garbage and recyclables out to the 22nd, and the north and south wing move theirs to the east to 21st. There wasn't an issue with that. So I mean, the issue is we could still get on the street parking, and if we're talking about moving or creating a no parking zone for people that, that they have an opportunity to put their put their cans in, and yet it's still on 21st and 22nd Avenue. Ultimately, that's what we'd want.
sure,
On
definitely.
both sides. I mean,
Yep.
Yeah,
both sides would want it. We just gotta work out
because
the
the
matrix.
flow is there
Right,
from
'cause you
your
guys are already driving
houses
through.
on down. But I don't want to, you can carry on a discussion without me. I think you've got enough information. You can do it when it's more convenient. I know you're running late. If there's anything else that you would want me for, I just want you to know there is definitely a willingness to accommodate. And it's been true, and Paul knows that. But we want to be included and not excluded from this service. That's the rub, so to speak.
Well, and that's the one thing I appreciated. I love when there's citizen engagement like this, and especially working together, because that's what makes a community. I think one of the things that I want to emphasize to the committee is, regardless regardless of what valuations are. And I want to make a clarification too. Everybody in the city has received a different valuation. We went through a new valuation, but we haven't received our tax bills yet. And that's key, because just because our valuations have increased doesn't necessarily mean
Well,
that
I
you're going to
just
pay.
wanted to
Yeah.
throw that in there
Exactly.
for your benefit.
One thing to help you out in this particular, should not necessarily help you out, but to identify is that there's, I don't know if the new valuation is the case, because I conducted this research prior to myself, and I was kind of surprised to get that letter in the mail too with my own property. But there are, as far as the taxable rate of what you guys are paying versus what I'm paying on my house is identical. And in fact, there's actually more than one unit that someone is paying more taxes than I am, because valuation of that unit or units are more than what my house is. So I can empathize. I mean, if you guys are paying full property taxes, which you are,
Yeah.
you know, the question is whether your valuation is there or not. I don't know. But as far as my unstatistically significant study, I don't want to reduce services that you had done before, so that's why I'm interested in working out an amicable situation with this.
And I think that's true on both sides here.
I think so.
Any- We can do this. I don't.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, there is. I mean, we're gonna have to make a decision
Thank you.
somewhat soon, as this thing's gonna move along the process, but as far as, I guess, the pickup there and that, we still have to do that.
Yeah. So I guess one of,
Food for thought.
you guys can take with this for what you want or whatever. As Ann had said, last week or the week prior, we delivered 6 carts to them, you know, just to try the area. Alderperson Graff made the referral, 2 months ago or whatever, and we talked about it. And because this is one of the items, you know, if you want to, it's not something that's necessarily a priority that has to be done tonight as far as deciding how we're gonna handle this situation. You know, if you want to have us continue to provide the service, you know, through September and October or something like that, and see how it's gonna work, it might be something to, you know, a suggestion from us or whatever, that we can table this one and move on to something else, you know, and bite this one off in days to come or whatever.
Yeah, no, I mean, if to make a decision, I can't speak for anybody else per se, but I don't feel comfortable taking away services that we have provided, especially it's non-income generating properties, it's their domiciles. So sometimes it's part of the cost of doing business. You know, that's a case where is it really equitably distributed? I have a 13-gallon garbage bag that I put out probably every other week. So really, you know, if I was to say I should have my garbage assessed accordingly, I would assume that my property taxes would go down, but that's not what a municipality is about. So if we, if we got to spend 5 more minutes doing it, that it doesn't put our guys in harm's way. You know, it'd be a different story if it was more of a safety concern, but that's why we're going to this cart system. So if it takes 5 more minutes, 10 more minutes to do that, then that's what we got to do. So.
Shane?
Just curious, what about other places that are classified as townhouses?
So there's three parcels in the city of Wisconsin Rapids that are considered townhouses. The Colonial Charm being one, the new one that's being built on the corner of 16th and Pepper, and then there is a 6-unit townhouse up on Strawberry Lane, right across from the senior housing there, and that's a 6-unit place. Same thing, that going through and cleaning up this mess of that the carts were delivered and stuff like that. That parcel was also delivered carts, and so we're going through and, you know, it's kind of on hold because of how we were gonna handle this one. Are we gonna handle it on a consistent basis or whatever? And we have now finally got them to deliver their carts to the curb, you know, where we're not going into the property to get them anymore. And so those are the three places that are classified as townhouses. Only difference is that, as Alderperson Kubishak said, that is all rentals. That's not owned by anybody else, individuals.
So we're gonna classify them differently because of ownership? I'm just trying to keep from other people showing up to the committee saying, hey, you pick up theirs, why not mine?
Right.
We're classified as a townhouse.
Right. That's the only difference is they're classified as townhouses, but it's owned by one individual and they're rentals.
That makes sense, as long as we can argue, or at least show that there is a difference and it's being applied consistently.
And I believe that those places on the corner of 16th and Pepper are all gonna be rentals too.
Right, yep. And I think that's a good dividing line, is owner occupied versus non. I think at the same time, the threshold of unit quantity, right? You know, if Colonial Charm had 40 units, I sure hope we wouldn't be having this conversation, we're trying to offer them service, right? And it's not, and that's why we had.
Right, but
kind
the
of a
other,
more
but the
lengthy
other argument is, you know, if you look at
conversation,
that building on the west side, you know, that faces, so I'm just thinking, you know, when I travel around and go to Washington DC, their townhouses stretch 2 miles long and everybody pulls out their garbage cans to the edge of the street because they're all owned, individually owned. That's the other unique thing about this, is because they're not lined up parallel with the street, it makes it a challenge. You know what I mean?
It's very unique.
It is definitely a unique situation, but like I said, I believe that the residents are willing to pull the carts off to the side to make it easier for the city to come through and pick them up. But like I said, in a townhouse setting, when you go down a mile-long street and they have nothing but townhouses, everybody pulls out their garbage to the street.
Yeah,
You know,
it
and
faces the street is a
but it
different
faces
story.
the street,
Yeah,
so
I agree.
that's the easier part.
Well, and I think one thing to clarify with what Shane brought up is that the townhouse is a classification that we're speaking of for assessment purposes, whereas like Mr. Merritt said, owner occupied. There's legal definitions of domiciles versus, you know, income property. So as far as that goes, there's a lot of legal precedent. So just relying on the assessment word of townhouse, no one can come in, well, I mean, it can't prohibit anybody from coming in, but from them actually seeking a legal remedy, it wouldn't.
Well, I would think as long as you clarify that in the ordinance, you know, owner occupied.
Well, and so that's actually what happened. You know, as Ann said, this has been like over 6 months that this has been going on, right? But when we first delivered the carts, we delivered it under the premises of this parcel being a multifamily, the property containing 5 or more residential units, including those that are occupied seasonally. It wasn't until about February of this year, if you saw originally when Joe had it up on the map, you saw the 18 different parcel lines going across that one parcel. That didn't happen until like January or February of this year, because we had a letter done saying, you know, it's been decided by the Public Works Committee, you know, based on the ordinance that we aren't going to provide service to you. And then I literally pulled up the map to get the addresses of all those parcels, and then that's when the 18 divisions showed up, and it's like, whoa, we no longer have one parcel, we have 18 parcels, you know. And so then that's kind of when the discussion with Steve and everything like that happened, you know. But that's just back discussion or whatever, so we can move forward.
Wonderful.
Okay, what's next on our list here?
Well, I guess one of the big items as far as I'm concerned is on the second page, a deadline for selecting the cart will be established. Those wishing to change cart sizes after the deadline will be charged an administration fee. So virtually what we would like to do is handle this the same way that we handled the recycling carts, where a letter will be sent out saying, you know, you will receive a 96-gallon cart unless you want a 48-gallon cart. And the only reason why this is kind of an issue is just so that we can, before the end of the year, place our order and be prepared for the spring delivery and stuff like that. So we want to get letters out to the property owners to say, okay, this is happening. This is what you're going to get unless you tell us, you know, otherwise, so that we have some month before the, you know, holiday season's coming up with Thanksgiving and Christmas and stuff like that. So we kind of want to start to get going on that. According to Joel's notes here, you know, we discussed it, but he didn't feel that, you know, there was a yay or nay, we're okay with this, or we want to go a different direction.
If I recall, I think that we decided on 96, but I don't know if we decided on a secondary size, and that might have been the hang up on that. But if that's a concern for you, I think as a committee, we could make that decision tonight.
We had an option of 48.
Yeah. Brad, if you actually go up 3 paragraphs from that, the very first one on the top of the second page, it says, discuss committee recommends 96 gallon with option
Oh,
of 48,
okay.
same as administering the recycling.
So.
I think we didn't wanna offer that 64 gallon one because right now we don't have
Yeah.
lids for, I mean, this makes it consistent for
Yep.
both.
So, I'm sorry, what is it that you're looking for? You want to have a date then? Paul?
No, so I guess
What-
we're just looking for approval to administer this
Yeah.
the same way that we administered the recycling carts, where it's acceptable to send out a letter to give the residents an option to go to the 48 gallon cart. And if you don't accept it, or you don't give us a decision by this date, there's gonna be administrative charge from that day forward. So virtually, it's
Absolutely,
or handling it the exact same way that we handle the
Yeah, I don't have a
recycling
problem
program.
with
I don't, so are you looking for a date, or are you looking
No,
for?
no, I think it's just because it's a red item here, it was just to virtually go back and be like,
Clarify.
okay, this is what we wanna do. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
Joe didn't feel that was covered enough and that this is okay to go with.
No, I think giving them 1 month for a deadline, and then with a $55 if you decide to change your, I mean, right now, if you default, the default is to a 96 gallon.
Correct.
So,
Yep, and that's what the letter will say, is that, you know, the city of Wisconsin Rapids is gonna provide you with a 96 gallon cart. If 96 gallon is too large for your family, you know, at this time, you can choose to go to a 48. You know, and the same paperwork, I think last time there was a letter that the property owner had to sign that said, you know, at this address would like a 48 gallon cart instead of a 96, and we simply put it into the database so that when we delivered them, you know, it was supposed to be 48 gallon carts delivered. That way we have a good number to go off of too when we order them, instead of having,
Mhm.
you know,
No,
196s and 100 or 248 sitting there, so.
Yeah, makes sense.
Fine with me.
I think the only rub has been, what's the best way to reach the one that wants to choose their size, right? Is it through the property tax bill, which goes to all property taxpayers, not necessarily tenants? Or does it go to all addresses, mailboxes? And I think that might be just an administrative thing we gotta work out, because we struggle with that, right? People call and then they wanna change their size, and then it's $55, and then they call these guys and they're upset. So I think we just have to maybe think about what's the best way to maybe reach people in their decision-making capacity. As a tax bill, when we do it in December, it's maybe a little late.
That's too
after
late,
your
yeah.
schedules, but, so
Yeah, and I guess-
something to think about, and not necessarily need to discuss, maybe these guys
Yeah.
have some thoughts.
Yeah, and I don't know, my thought is that as the property owner, to me, you're the one that has the right. You know, the tenants come and go, and that's what we've noticed is that the tenant comes and they want a 96 gallon cart, and the previous person had a 48 gallon cart, you know, and it's like, well, sorry, you know, as a tenant, your landlord wanted you to have a 48 gallon cart, you know.
no, but I do, Mr. Mayor, if you think of a good way to communicate to people, you know, make sure you let us know, because that's obviously the hardest thing in the world to do, is to make sure everybody, because you gotta hit every platform and what people like to get their information from, and that's,
I think,
So
we
good luck.
just know we can get more through other channels now.
Right.
Previously, it was more like, let's just rely on the letter, and the
Yep.
letter wasn't sure.
No, because we even found that out too when we, you know, this year when we chip sealed, we mailed property owners letters saying we were gonna be in the area, please don't park on the street. And I think we had 400 letters that were sent out, and I think we got probably 50 to 75 of them that came back because that address didn't exist. But the address existed, but the people that lived there didn't get mail, you know, so it was like, okay.
Don't you put like, or current resident
Yeah.
on there?
But
And
there
it
was
still
no
doesn't-
mailbox at that location.
Really?
Apparently I have to check with Jen to see for certain if I'm misunderstanding it, but we got a stack about like that. of
Really?
Return letters and,
Well, can we cross-reference with like Water and Light, because obviously they must have updated addresses for.
yeah, and we use the tax bill, you know, of the actual parcel ID and then the mailing address of the parcel, so.
Well, if they get kicked back, they get kicked back. We're not in the business of being everybody's mother type of thing. But I do like the idea of a separate letter, not necessarily because I want to spend more money sending it out, but I think that it might also be an opportunity for advocacy. You know, have another, whatever, we can have up to 6 pages in there. So have the concept, the city is going to do this. And by the way, having a different color form saying, hey, if you want a different size, by default you can get 96, please return this by X amount of date, or call the shop or something like that. But I mean, it is what it is, you know. I mean, if people don't want to waiting till a tax bill is, I think, way too late. You guys gotta have mortars already.
Yeah.
And looking at the time frame that's here, which we're somewhat gonna have to follow pretty tight to get this
Correct.
up and going next spring.
Yep.
The notice to the property owners with the card options and that is actually next month. So I think, you know, between now and our meeting next month, we should be putting all of this together,
Oh, yeah.
if not all, darn near all of it, to,
Absolutely.
so we can keep moving along.
The second item on there, you know, I think is going to be taken care of here in the next months when we get our budgets done to see where we're at as far as, through Tim, as far as financing the carts and things like that. You know, like the majority of the other items are things that we need to, you know, continue to hash out as far as the townhouses and trailer parks. I guess we can go to discussing bulk item pickups if you want to continue, or for the sake of time, since we started late, if you want to.
Well, I can talk about that one for a little bit here.
Okay.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind hashing as much as
Yep.
in and out.
Yep, nope, that's fine.
Do we wanna start back over then, go back to the second page and go after, one car will be supplied for residential, for all residential, single-family duplex and apartments up to 4 dwellings?
Sure. Yeah, so, kind of learning off of the recycling carts, you know, for the duplexes and fourplexes and things like that, we're kind of doing an inventory now, through the driver as far as how many carts are being placed out, because when we originally placed the carts, we placed, you know, a duplex, unless the landlord requested, we placed 2 carts there. Fourplex, same thing, we placed 4 carts. And there's lots of areas where we have duplexes or fourplexes that all 4 carts aren't being used. And so we're kind of doing an inventory as we go, keeping track of those situations on a monthly basis to be like, okay, this complex has 4, they only put out 2, you know, and so we're gonna go back and be like, okay, you guys aren't using all 4, let's take them back because they're just aging, sitting there not doing anything, plus it's unsightly for the most part. And so that's where our discussion kind of came up, is that, you know, let's deliver for sure 1 cart to every parcel, and then if these duplexes request another one, you know, kind of come up with a solution for that ahead of time.
So the hard part is garbage over recycling.
Right.
So the quantity for garbage is obviously significantly more
Yep.
than for recycling.
So then what are we trying to make a decision on?
So this is the 3rd page here, right, or was that the second? Oh, it was the second
bottom.
page, I'm
Second.
sorry.
Bottom.
Bottom of the second one. So our recommendation was to provide 1 cart per every unit, you know, both single-family, duplexes, and up to fourplexes. If there's additional carts that are requested, the property owner could request it, and then build appropriately
Yeah.
if need be.
So it's not per property, it's per family dwelling then, or family unit?
It would be per property. The proposal would be that 1 cart for every duplex, so they could add another 1 or 2 more if they were really consuming, right? They would be paying a fee for
Yeah.
that, for that cart.
I have a bad feeling that that's gonna get kinda gonna increase, cause especially with the amount of quadplexes or fourplexes that we have in Lee's area, I can't see that everybody, all 4 units are gonna have limited garbage for just 196 container. I could kinda see maybe a duplex, the sharing of that, but with a quadplex, we're probably gonna run into issues day one.
And
See,
some
that was kind of the issue too, because in the original ordinance prior to the city council passing this ordinance, quadplexes weren't even considered. It was only 3, 2, or 1.
no, it's always been fourplexes.
It was 4 because they changed it, but when we got the original language from Point or wherever, the sample language said don't deal with quadplexes. Well, now we did with recycling, so now we have to deal with it with garbage.
So we've always dealt with quadplexes, but when Joe had talked to Steve Shapiro, the assessor, I'm sorry, thank you, the assessor, when in talking about residential parcels, it's typically 3 or less, but our ordinance has always read 4 or less. And so that's where technically, that's where Joe didn't want us to go away from 4 because it's always been 4.
Okay.
I believe is, so. Yeah,
Then I apologize.
No, that's fine. You were right, because when we went to talk to the other municipalities, they were looking at 3 or less as residential parcels. But because our ordinance always read 4, Joe chose not to go away from 4 and stick with 4, just based on the recommendation of the assessor's office.
So in the past with a quadplex, did you hand out one for every dwelling? So on a
For
quadplex, you do
quadplexes,
4.
they currently have 4, and for recycling carts. But that's where we're finding that, because like you said, it's recycling compared to garbage, that they're not,
They're underutilized.
yeah, they're underutilized. 2 of them are sitting, or 3 of them are sitting. We have had some owners of quadplexes, because of the fact of, now there's 4 carts and they have to take them out to the street. Their tenants aren't taking them out to the street. They've just said, forget it. They've gone away from the city, got their own dumpster or whatever for recyclables, and garbage. And that's where it's kind of, I think we kind of, Joe alluded to this in one of his discussions, that, some of these fourplexes, they'd be better served, provided service if they had a 2-yard dumpster sitting there. Which in some case, some of the quadplexes that we currently provide service to do have dumpsters. But we're not gonna be in the business of, or at least at this time, we're not gonna be in the business of picking up dumpsters.
Do you have any idea how many quadplexes we have throughout the city?
I don't have quadplexes, no, but I can get you that information.
And the only reason I'm asking is because if it's not a significant number of quadplexes, then just give them 4 containers like we did with recycling.
Sure.
If it becomes an issue where the property owner says, I have 8 carts sitting here, I need 4.
And I think that's,
At that point, I'm assuming as a city, we would take that back and then reutilize those carts because they all are identified.
yep, and I think that's where the,
Not that we want to have extra carts, but.
right, that's where we were going originally with this delivering 1 cart, and then if the landlord requested an additional cart, then we would provide that additional cart. I didn't know, in our original discussion, that we were gonna charge them, based on the equity service piece again, if they were entitled as a quad or fourplex, that we were gonna charge them for that, but I maybe misunderstood in that last discussion.
And that might, for further discussion, the one concern that I've got is if we only drop 1 off and we rely on the property owner to contact us to have 2, 3, 4, 20 carts or whatever they want, because that's what their garbage is. The property owner doesn't necessarily live there, and what I'm kind of concerned about is if there's just 1 cart, they're gonna bring a cart out, then the other residences are gonna put the bags next to the cart, and that's what we're trying to totally eliminate.
Exactly, yep.
What we wanna do is make sure that everybody's utilizing the
Yep.
carts. It might be a case where if we don't give 4 per 4 unit, we give 2 per 4 unit, that might cause the utilization of recycling now comes into play, because you can't stuff that much into the garbage cans, and that's what I would like to see facilitated, is a lot more recycling, or more recycling than what currently is being involved right now. But yeah, so then the question is, now if there are more than 1, then is there cost? Is there initial cost for that? But I've got a little bit of a concern that if only 1 is dropped off, it might, in the short time especially, but maybe in the medium time, we're gonna be the ones that have to jump out of the truck and throw the stuff in and whatever else, and we can try and find find them, but what we wanna try and do is potentially eliminate that before it even happens. So
Go ahead.
so my recommendation, I guess, would be dropping 2 off per 4 with that, I guess, if that makes sense.
And you hit the nudge that we're going
Makes
for, right?
sense.
Is a lot of these multi-unit, multi-family stuff are not recycling today. That's why we've got 4 bins. We want to get 2 of them back. And I think, not to jump back to the previous point, but if we start applying 4 carts or even 3, I could see maybe 1 to 2 or something, some sort of ratio. That using that reserve fund to fund those carts jumps dramatically, right? Not from like a couple $100,000 to like twice that much, right? Just because it's the cost of these carts. So I think there was a couple of points there. One was the cost of distributing all of these to the taxpayers without especially assessing them. But then finding a point of equity, right? And I think that's to Joe's final point in there is everybody would have the opportunity to buy additional carts, whether or not we charge for additional pickup or not, but we certainly want to nudge recycling because it's a far less cost. And 2, the fact that these are 96-gallon carts, right? They're not 32-gallon that we're accustomed, that many people put out today. It's 3 times that for every residential unit. So it's a lot of service. You know, one would say more than what many people take advantage of today. So I think you're onto something with the ratio. 4 for a 4-dwelling unit with 1 or 2 bedrooms is overkill. We know that, right? You don't have 4 people living in each of those units. So yeah, I would just encourage you to think minimally and then find ways to easily grow into something a bit more. And I think that's what's almost been proposed here is there's a lot of flexibility for people that want more service than what might otherwise be given.
Mr. Chairperson.
Yeah. and-
Okay, well, I 2 to 4 is fine. I mean, I was kind of thinking that myself. So.
2 bins to a 4-unit
Right.
operation
Yep,
program.
yep.
Does that seem reasonable?
I think so, as the mayor alluded to, you know, our current ordinance is 3 32-gallon garbage cans can be placed per residential parcel, so that's one
I think it's 2
96-gallon.
to 4 or else it's 1 to 4.
Right.
And if they want another one, they purchase it. So, but I can go with the 2.
We should be able to get a number too based on the request. How prevalent are these? I mean, we can all think of a few, but there's,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Right, I don't know, I mean, we could sit and talk about this, but I mean, really, if there's only 10 quadplexes and only 2 are utilizing the services, because somebody
Sure.
else went outside, really, this is a moot point.
Yeah. No, and like I say, if you want to go with that, or if you want more information about how many parcels we're talking about, I can do whatever. I can get you the information too, but this is what you want to go with.
Let's go with that.
Single
Okay.
1, duplex 1, 4, or 2 for
4-plex.
4-plex?
Yep.
Yep.
Okay, good work. And then the $55 additional fee if they wanted another one.
Right.
Yep.
Okay.
Want to tackle another one? Or?
You bet.
Yep.
Yep.
We're on a roll here.
I would say that on page 3, those other issues are kind of what we're still working through as far as the townhouses and trailer parks, or do you want to tackle those, or?
Well, this is what I would like to see, I guess, is kind of advocacy with that, is either reaching out with a letter or something to these income properties like a mobile home park, and get the owner knowing that we're making a transition right now, because I think it's one of those that, and again, unknowns with the recycling aspect, there was, we caught ourselves with a situation. So making that distinction between owner-occupied and income property is big, and the sooner that we can tackle that, the better.
So as far as trailer parks, we currently have 5 trailer parks in the city of Wisconsin Rapids. So we have Crimson Leaf, which is on Griffith Avenue. That's a 24 unit, and I believe that there's an age requirement to be in that unit, so there's kind of older people that live there. Then next to it is the Maple Manor Trailer Park, which enters off of A Street. It's virtually right next to that one. There's capability of 126 units in that park, and we delivered 85 carts there. Then there's also, I believe it's called Parkview on 16th Street North up by Robinson Park. There's 21 trailers there. There's a trailer park on West Grand Avenue there, just below the overpass. And I believe there's 15 trailers in that one. And then Thousand Oaks, which is over here by the, in district currently has 75 trailers in that park.
So what's your, I guess, what is kind of your recommendation? We got
Well, so we, the ordinance reads a 1 to 5 on that, which I don't know if that's going to work as far as garbage goes, you know. But the same thing, Thousand Oaks were originally, so it was the same thing, that the carts got delivered incorrectly, except for the 2 trailer parks on the west side. When we went back to Crimson Leaf, that's when you made your original referral to this committee, I think, but I don't know that we ever brought it up as far as, because we had conversations with the owner there that we were gonna come back on a 1 to 5, and then we kind of put it in limbo because knowing that this ordinance was gonna get looked at again and everything like that. But the current ordinance is carts will be delivered at 1 to 5. If there's a request for additional carts, we would sell the carts at $55 to however many you wanted, but that would be the responsibility of the property owner and or the trailer park owners. So that's what Thousand Oaks did. Thousand Oaks just bought 60 carts within the last month because it wasn't working with the 1 to 5 with their tenants. And so the solution to their owner was to buy the carts and go to a 1-to-1 ratio there. You know, trailer parks, in my opinion, are similar to a residential situation where everybody has their own driveway. They don't have a common garage area, you know, and you can go in there and every 5 seconds you pick up a can and you're in and out of a, you know, park pretty quickly. Garbage is probably going to be, you know, the same thing. You know, I think it's a little bit easier to provide them service, but same thing, you're not getting recyclables at a high rate there either, you know, so not in all cases, I guess it's not fair.
But, you know, and with the exception of the mobile home parks, all carts must be placed accessible location to the street right away. Now, are you asking for trailer parks to do that?
No, this is
I
the
was gonna
one,
say
this
that'd
is,
be-
this is the one where we were requesting a variance from the property owner to allow us to come on the parcel, because most of them have their own inner street system that's designed, you know, nice wide streets or whatever.
Drive through and around.
Yeah, you can drive it like a normal car, you know, for the most part. The one up by Robinson is a little small. I think it's like a 25-foot road going through there versus, you know, everything else, or a 20-foot road going through there versus everything else being 24 or 30 feet wide. Because they do design them so that the trailers, you know, I think Thousand Oaks is doing a lot of work where they're moving out old trailers and bringing in newer ones. I don't go through there very often. You might have more information on that since it's in your district, but for the most part, it's easy to get around in.
And I don't see, you know, the park owner must submit written requests or permission for the city to enter that. I think that's completely appropriate for damages to the driveway or property.
And we've got immunity when it comes down to municipal rights anyway. I mean, they would have to really substantially provide substantial evidence that we destroyed property. But as far as identifying this, even a 1 to 5 ratio, as long as we let them know way ahead of time that this is what it is, you know, it's that kind of getting caught off guard type of thing that no one likes, you know.
Right.
1 to 5?
1 to 5 is fine for me.
Yep, okay.
I mean, worst case scenario, we can always change it. you
Right.
know.
Yep.
Shake, you got it.
It's already too late, but I just find it odd that we pick up in trailer parks, that they don't have a community dumpster system, like an apartment building. But we've already gone down that path with recycling, but it just seems like that would make sense for a private community dumpster.
They're assessed differently, right? I mean, if we go back to how they're paying
That is
taxes.
true.
You know, and I don't want to misspeak, but there's a whole, right, isn't there a personal property tax, instead of a, you know, real estate tax situation there?
Yeah,
I
and
fully agree.
most of them are rentals, so it's income generating.
So that's commercial property.
Yeah.
I think
Maybe
I think the ones, Crimson Leaf and Maple Manor, I believe those are owner occupied.
And maybe that's where you,
I can't say 100%, you know, but
Crimson Leaf is putting a bunch of money into theirs,
Yep.
redoing all that water there. That's a big undertaking.
I just think of it more as an apartment complex, but spread out.
and those are what, 2-bedroom trailers? I mean, I don't know, probably 2, maybe 3 if they're larger, but that's more like a mobile manufacturer home that's in a development maybe.
Yeah.
It's a lot of stops every week, that's how I look at it. It's
Mhm.
not efficient anyway. And I know who got the 1 out of the 5 and where they were located between those 5 trailers
Exactly.
was like, I am not getting in the middle of that with those folks.
Because they both, yeah, a lot of them have like a common area or whether it be a washing machine area, you'd think they would have a dumpster area. And just
well,
take
like I
a
said,
garbage there.
the only 2 that were technically distributed the right way were the, you know, Thousand Oaks and the one on Highway 73 by the overpass. Everybody else was delivered, you know, a single cart per, you know, and an error on our part when we went through and did the census on them, so.
Who actually did do the delivery of the carts originally?
It was a company that was hired by the manufacturer of the cart. That's what they do. They go around and deliver them all the
Okay.
time. But they delivered it based on the information that we gave them. So it wasn't that they did it wrong. We compiled the addresses the wrong way, so.
So what you're saying is we're looking to not give trailer parks service based on if they're owner occupied or?
No. I guess I wasn't, I was just making an observation, because I think a bell's already been rung with recycling, that it would be consistently done then.
And we perform garbage service already there, right?
Yes.
That's the other big selling point that we're trying to
Yep.
reconcile.
1 to 5.
What's our next one?
Should we handle bulk items?
Can you guys just go back? You guys are okay
Yeah.
with us providing, on the top of the page, it says discussed and agreed, but, so we're acceptable of going into the private property, right? Everything else we want it placed at the street right away.
Yeah.
Yep.
The townhouses we're not done with yet, because we're gonna continue to look at that or whatever. 1 to 5, for the trailer parks. If they want additional, they can, purchase additional.
Yep.
Yeah, so the next item would be bulk items then.
So I believe I chatted with you a little bit on this. I mean, I still, you know, think about if we don't handle it in some fashion, it's gonna end up where we don't want it. So somehow we have to be able to, do I think we should buy a truck to handle bulk items? No. But I know trying to do a garbage drop off at the city garage turned into a mess. Trying to have unattended compost site turns into a mess. So how would you effectively, you know, because then everybody waits until after 3:30 or 5 o'clock when the attendant's gone, everybody just goes through, dumps their garbage, leaves. So I mean, that's a big issue. I don't know how to.
So some of the items that we discussed with this was doing the spring and fall cleanup, correct? Similar, you know, to what we tried to do north of Grand Avenue, maybe not to that extent. We also had discussions about tags going out with a tax bill and then having it a call for service type thing where you got a new couch and you got, as a property owner, you got two prepaid receipts or tags that you could dispose of one large item per tag. And when you got a new couch, you call and said, hey, I'm gonna I have a couch that needs to be picked up, and then you virtually just provide the service on a call-in basis. We also didn't really talk 1 month, one week a month discussion, because we thought that was gonna be excessive. You know, kind of the same thing is what does the majority people need? You know, majority of the people, you know, it's one every 10 years that they buy a new couch, or 15 years that they buy a new couch. And the fortunate part for us is that we have a landfill that's on the northwest corner, you know, but not everybody has that mechanism to be able to get something out there.
So, just to be clear, we're looking to get rid of the garbage trucks, right? The rear loading.
Yes.
So how would we handle to pick up the bulk items?
So the discussion is we have a little loader over at the wastewater treatment plant that has a clam on the front of it. So you have a 2-person truck that goes out. They get done with their route in X amount of time. There's still time left out in the day. If they have a list, they could take the little loader with the clam on it and the dump truck and go pick up. Maybe there's 4 pieces, you know, that they go and pick up, put it in the back of the truck, and it stays sitting in the back of the truck until it's full. Or a second shift comes in and takes it to the landfill then, or whatever, you know.
Would it be completely inappropriate to say that we would have like a spring and fall cleanup, do it twice a year? How much money do you think that would just signify a weekend that everybody gets it out, and then Monday morning we're tasked with the opportunity to drive around and pick it up?
Our experience was, and that's why we don't do, like Grand Rapids does the clean, whatever they call
Clean
it.
sweep
They're
or
twice a year
choose
they
to
do their
reuse.
choose to reuse.
Oh, excuse me.
And it is a free-for-all of the 7 to 10 municipalities around us. It's the 7,000 residents in Grand Rapids or Saratoga that showed up, you know, or not all of them, but a good portion of those folks wanted to show up at our, you know, first Ward 1 cleanup, you know, a couple of years ago. We did that a couple times, and it was like, we couldn't believe the people that were bringing in trailers from outside the city. So I look at this purely from do we want money for roads and road maintenance, or do we want money for a very subsidized, very small amount of population that uses that service? I think if you were to ask 10 of your residents, your best friends, they're gonna tell you they'd rather have resources go put into something that's a higher value of the whole community than a service that's very low impact in terms of who takes advantage of it, right? We're talking about landlords, we're talking about the occasional remodel jobs, but the remodel jobs are generally hauled away by contractors or roll-off dumpster or something like that. And if grandma gets a new couch, she's gonna call or give it to a neighbor and donate it. I mean, we in this town see the truck all the time down by Mauston, the Restore. The Restore comes up and gives free pickups for anybody that wants to donate stuff to them, building materials, couches, furniture, you know, any other furniture. So I think if we think about it, there's a lot of opportunity to get out of that service. Don't meddle in it. Don't get messy and administratively it's too complicated to do any of the thing I believe in. And again, this is a pure decision of if we had a buck, where would we spend that buck? Would we pick it up on bulk pickup, or because we got a landfill and all these other reasons, or we maybe put it into road maintenance, or you name whatever other streets priority that we'd like to reallocate those dollars. So to me, it's a very easy decision and suggestion to the committee, but you know, we all have to live with it.
I would, for myself, go without, get out of it.
How do other communities handle it? It's like Point Marshfield.
So Stevens Point is managed by the city. Wausau is managed by a contracted service, and so is Marshfield. Wausau is fee-based, and I'm pretty confident that Marshfield is also fee-based. I don't have that answer for you for Stevens Point, but I think it's a like quarterly thing for them. It's hard for them because they have the university there, so they have kids that are moving out and stuff like that. So
Is there,
I-
oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Is there a possibility that we can work with the landfill and have a one-off type of a better rate for residents, or that provide a
it is actually, it used to be in the contract that there's a tipping fee of $20 a ton for Wisconsin Rapids residents.
And for whatever reason in the past, when I guess I wasn't unaware of that, because there has been times where I paid the initial fee, and I don't quote me on this, but it's a lot more than $20. So if we advertise it, I don't know how well the landfill wants everybody to know that type of thing. But if that is the case, then that's a very good option. You know, I mean, if you got getting rid of a couch and this is a one-time deal, $20. I mean, you know.
Or take it to choose to reuse when Grand Rapids runs it.
I struggle with allocating resources to spending so much time to pick that up.
And that's what I agree with you with the time, is that's why I'm saying, like, and I don't know the answer, like you said, if it's a quarterly pickup, but the thing is, it has to be concentrated and at a time where it's easier to administer, otherwise forget it.
Right.
I think the one-off projects, we don't even have a truck anymore to service the one-off projects, and
And do we want guys from a workman's comp standpoint? That's why we're doing automated in the first place,
Right.
right? Is to want to stay into that liability of injury. I just don't think.
Yeah, and that's why the thought was, is we have the piece of equipment already with the clam on it, you know, it can grab the back of it, put it in the back of the truck, there's no touching anything, you know.
until it breaks apart.
Until it breaks, or
Yeah.
you have 100 people
But
on the list and you got so much time into it.
Yeah, we're providing garbage services, but we don't have to provide everything services
Yeah.
as far as that's
That's what I
related.
struggle with.
Yeah.
Guys committing time to it.
And I still, I'm thinking like when I back, obviously it's been a while, but I used to have a membership at Anytime Fitness, and they have those little
Key fobs.
key fobs. Now, to me, compost site, I mean, how many times do we hear people dropping stuff at the compost site that don't even live in the city, and they're looking for their tag, oh, I forgot my tag at home, who's really checking that? We go back into closing off the compost site where everybody, a resident has a key fob. It'd be the same thing at the dumpster to say, hey, here, I'm a resident, here's my key fob, I can dump it here for $20 or whatever, you know what I'm saying? That's ideal.
I think we can work something out. I think Advance have been really amenable to doing different creative things. You know, if it's from a proximity, we have a dumpster on each side of the river. You know, there's some creative things we can do that don't cost us, $10,000 a year in equipment rental fees, and then guys with injuries and everything else.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess, in my opinion, I think we should stay away from it and look at avenues for
Let
the garbage,
Well,
you know.
we're picking up garbage. Anything that fits in a 96-gallon container.
Break it up.
That's get a chainsaw, break it out, throw it in there. Wait a couple weeks, put some more in there. I don't know, but yeah, we're providing a service, but we're potentially not renewing a service that only a handful of residents and property owners are benefiting from right now. So, yeah, I would say completely, someone has to get rid of their couch. If we could advertise the Restore, because I completely forgot all about that. I don't have anything, I reuse everything I got. But I mean, that is a very valid option, and I never even thought about that. But having that on our website, having their phone number on there, there's a Restore in Wausau too, so I mean, we could have that. And you're right, they come and pick up the items as well.
Do we still have that tipping fee with the waste management for residents?
Is it
It's
still-
in the current, I believe it's still in the current contract.
We should
I'd have
definitely
to double
advertise
check-
that too.
double
When
check
we
that.
roll this out, like you said, let's put this out there and let's get that information out here to say, yeah, we're not gonna handle bulk items, but
Mhm.
since you're a resident, you can take advantage of this service.
Sure.
Like, let's do that.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Enjoy the rest of your discussion.
Night.
Do you wanna do one more item here and then move
Yeah,
on?
move it through it.
So the one right underneath it is simply, for non-compliance issues, kind of like what that had alluded to earlier, where somebody puts 3 bags of garbage right next to their cart, because their cart was full. The problem with it right now is that it doesn't go away. If there's more than 3 32-gallon carts, or it's somebody moved out where it's an excessive of 96 gallons right now, we tag it, call the code enforcement officer. The code enforcement officer goes through his process that he has to do, and a lot of times next week it's still there, and so what do we want? We want our neighborhoods to look clean. We want residents to be proud of their neighborhoods, and how can you be proud of something when somebody across the street isn't, and so it's difficult because some of these are rental properties and some of them are personal owned, where the person that whatever did the crime isn't necessarily going to be paying for it, but this is what he's just is that it would be a one-time fee of $10 to pick up those bags right away. And virtually what would happen is they would dump the cart, put the cart back, still be in the truck. The operator would get out of the truck, throw the bags into the cart. You can run the cart from the curb, standing there, put it back, you know, and then it's taken care of. And then there would be that fee that was associated with it, so. I'm sure we probably have to do something similar to what we do with our sidewalks currently when we go out and plow sidewalks and take a picture of it prior to, you know, just to cover that piece of it or whatever, you know, but.
Makes sense.
So there's codes on every bin,
Yeah.
so it's associated with the homeowner,
Yes.
and we don't have a GPS in the trucks or anything.
It's capable, so currently, as of last Thursday, the trucks were put out for bid, or the bids were due back. So yes, we can get that service where it takes a picture of actually the route video for the whole day. So yes, we can add that as an option. That was one of the options that were requested.
What is the option?
So
For the GPS, what is that option, that viewing?
So there's a scanner on the arm, and then it in the handle of your recycling container is a RFID tag ID. So it would scan that. It would then say what the serial number is and the location. Everything is tied through the serial number of the cart. So your cart is 1064. It's tied to your address. So then it would simply send the information back that says, you know, there was no cart at this address or whatever. So
I
when it
thought my
comes in-
card was 1064.
I pulled the number out.
It was up until yesterday. So,
Yeah, he moved it.
so I mean, that would be an easy way if we did have that to administer some sort of fee along with that. So I mean,
Yep.
if the fact that it's got the video footage, it's tied to the homeowner, and truth of the matter is, as far as rental properties go, that rental property, those carts are assigned to that rental property, and they typically pay,
But,
help me out, there's always a fee, like a damage fee.
Yeah.
Security
deposit,
deposit.
like,
If they gotta start charging people some of their security deposit because of the trash left out and the fact that the city assessed them $20 extra.
Yeah, and I think it would actually be,
50. Oh,
yeah, I think it is. I think it's $10 to pick up the bag and then $60. $10 to pick up the bag and then an administrative fee.
Also, it'd be $60 a crack. I
Yep.
mean, I don't know if you guys feel that's appropriate.
Yeah, that kind of bumps it up kind of high, unless we had like a
That's an
graduated
incentive,
board.
though.
It is, it very is, but I mean,
And then if you're doing a graduate, then you can keep it track of.
I mean, I would feel comfortable if I got dinged a $10 thing, I'd write a check for $10 really easy. But if it was $60, and that's when I'm making a phone call, unless it's like the second or third, if it's like a habitual thing, then that's where I'm absolutely fine with a higher thing. But if it's a one-time deal and $10 is easy, you know.
My issue is we don't want them to do it, so we would need to
No.
get it high, so it'd be like, oh, we won't do that one again.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you, you know, but I mean, if there's like,
Oh, let's back up. So I misread this. It's a pre-scheduled thing. You had a Christmas
Right.
party, a graduation party, so that was just a $10 fee. So,
Okay.
so you had a party at your house, you had more than 96 gallons, you called in and said, hey, I don't know what your address is, but I got 6 additional bags. So then they're only getting charged $10 for that. It's the $10 fee plus the $50 for the person that didn't pre-call or didn't follow the rules. So that's the difference, I'm sorry.
so then if I had 6 bags, then it'd be $20, is that the way, up to 3 bags in addition?
It said 3 bags of 10, yeah.
I think assuming that 3 bags would fill the 96-gallon cart,
The
you
second-
dump it, and then you'd have to
Yeah.
so it'd be $10 every time you dumped it.
Okay.
That's why,
Well,
that's why,
again, I wouldn't have a problem as long as I knew, and maybe that's what we might have to do is clarify this, because if it's up to 3 bags, it's $10, but then 3 times now 3 more bags, then that's 10 times 2. And if it's the case, I wouldn't have a problem, writing a check for that or whatever.
Yeah.
But is there quite an increase to have those RF tags put in?
No, we have them in all of everything
Oh, okay.
right now. Because the intent is, we used recycling. None of us have been exposed to the automated system, so we used it as a learning curve, because if you miss recycling or you mess up on recycling, it's not really that big of a deal to not get it picked up. You know, it's not gonna smell in your garage like garbage sitting there for 4 weeks. And so, yes, the RFD tags, I think it was 25 cents a cart to put the RFID tag, or RFD tags in there.
The repair cost of what that reader is on the arm is slightly different than
Right,
25 cents.
exactly. Well, and so that being said, you know, I can't recall what the cost of it was.
That's what I mean, was it $20,000, and that
Right.
$20,000, is it worth doing, because we really see that many offenses?
Right, because you can, with our
Then we'll just-
with our GIS software, I can just give the driver an iPad and he can go through and pick the parcel
Take a picture.
and it automatically gets sent back to Jen and we do the invoicing or whatever, you know. But I mean, we can bring that back. I mean, we can come up with a recommendation and then come up with a solution to the recommendation, whether it's the RFD reader on the truck itself, or if it's something that we still do. You know, I'm guessing we're gonna kind of be, I would say, less than what we have as far as violations right now. You know, I think he's probably about 5 or 6 violations a day, maybe 10 violations a day. So I think this is probably gonna be less than that.
But if it's $20,000 for that reader,
Right.
at that point, we just gotta have the ability to ID it. And then the other thing is do we have the administration in order to handle these billing? Because I don't know if you noticed in the last meeting, we had to hire out another service because we had billing and yet we couldn't handle it, so we ended up hiring out another service, so.
No, I wasn't here for that, I'm sorry.
Well, that is actually a very good question in terms of, do we have the personnel and software to maintain to keeping up with the fines and charges?
Yeah, so I think that's a evolving door. Obviously, we have the Unis, right? Is that the name of it? The new accounting and HR software that's starting to implement, you know, and that's going to push some of that activity down to us. So we're gonna have that capability more than we ever had. You know, right now, we go through and we make an Excel spreadsheet and send it over, and then another person does the billing. Not very efficient, right? So now the time that we're gonna spend in Excel is simply gonna be us implementing the cost right into the accounting software, and it's gonna get invoiced out of our office rather than coming out of here. So, so yes, so the answer is yes and no. No, we don't currently have something that's very efficient, but I think in the future, just in the demos that I've seen of it, I think it's gonna be very efficient and
Oh.
cost effective.
Well, that's good to hear. So,
Yeah.
yeah, that's,
I guess my thought is if it had that reader, or you had some way to identify the parcel, it goes right on their taxes. The pictures attached to their tax, they get their tax bill, they have five
Sure.
pre-scheduled maintenance, it's only $50 for the year. I can see my pictures. Oh
Yep.
yeah, you did catch me. And the dates on it, the times on it, the driver
Yep.
doesn't have to spend all the time. We have no administrative cost to it, because it literally gets assessed to that tax, to that parcel.
Sure.
We don't bill it every year. When when everybody pays their taxes, there's an assessment that gets set to the side, say it's $100,000 or whatever, that's set aside for administrative fees for garbage or recycling pickup. Then that money gets moved over to the Public Works Department because that's what you got in fines.
Yeah, and the only problem with that is just the delay in getting those finances back, right? You know, because it happened in May, June, July, August, or whatever, and their tax bill isn't sent out until November. So it might be December, or, you know, the next 3 payments and whatever it is, February and March and. You
Well, I
know,
was just
so-
thinking it-
Yeah,
you know-
but the administrative fee part of it is none compared to the other way, right? So.
Right.
So is it safe to say then that the fees are supported, but how it's administered maybe needs to have some work on it?
Right.
well, I wouldn't even worry about administered yet until we get to
Yeah.
that point. So
Okay.
if everybody complies, then we don't have to worry about it, right? You know, so I'm fine with the $10 up to 3 bags if it's called in advance, and I'm fine with the $50
Okay, yeah.
type of a minimum service if it's.
But I think you would still have to look at the reader on the
Sure.
truck, the arm.
Yeah.
Just to kind of give us a cost comparison.
I
Like
see what
said,
you mean. Yeah.
if we're only seeing $5,000 worth of fines a year, but the card reader is $50,000 every
Right.
time it craps out, it's not.
So I think what the intent of this is because we have to rewrite the ordinance.
Mhm.
And so by having a direction with this, we can include these fees in the ordinance itself, so we can get started on that, in September, October, so that the ordinance is in place in December or January of 2019, so that's the reason why this one too is kind of important, because now that we can move on with the next step.
I see what you mean. So for clarification, like I think what you're suggesting is that we haven't decided whether we want to go with an add-on for an RFID reader on the arm. The question is, can we implement it with just having an iPad in the cab of the truck if it's infrequently 5 to 10 of these per day? If it's infrequently that the driver can actually snap a picture, because although the picture is not going to pick up an RFID, but I'm sure we could probably also get a cheap RFID reader that we could stick out of the cab of the truck, to read that. But it also does have a serial number on
Yeah.
there as well. So we could take the picture of the serial number, and that would still correlate with that property.
Yeah, I think the direction is just in order to have that thought in
Yep.
mind when
Yeah, yeah.
we look at the RFP for the trucks, because when do you have to have that in?
The trucks were actually in last Thursday, so I have those on my desk. I was hoping to come to finance tonight, but I got it in too late, yep.
Yeah.
To choose the option of having that add-on.
So we can still do that because it hasn't been approved by committee. I
Sure.
can send out an RFP tomorrow for that. Actually, no, it's already included as an option. I just have to look at it and accept that option, so.
Perfect.
No, thank you.
So I think we made some pretty good headway here.
Well, we got one more, right?
Leaves.
Oh, okay.
Last
Yep,
page.
I'm sorry.
Collection.
Yeah. So obviously, many of you see our antiquated leaf pickups. Currently, we require people to bag it, put it at the curb, and we go around with the garbage trucks to pick up the leaves. I think we can either no longer provide that service because we have 2 compost sites, or if we do continue to provide it, request that residents use a craft bag system, which are the paper bags. You can get those at Home Depot. Ace supplies them or whatever, or maybe it's suggesting that we have ODC, supply them or whatever. I think currently, last meeting, I think I looked it up, it was $2.50 for 10 of them, I think, or $25 for 10 of them, so $2.50 a piece. With the craft bags, we could virtually, once again, drive around with loaders, throw them in the bucket of the loader, dump them in the back of a dump truck. Not necessarily very efficient, but it's not also efficient to keep a $50,000 truck for 2 weeks out of the year either, so.
This is one thing that I don't want to lose as a service, so if it is a case, can you elaborate a little bit more, Paul, on the ODC as far as they have relationship with these craft bags?
They don't.
Oh.
No, they don't. Just the floods of 2011, ODC chose to be a supply house of places for sandbags.
Oh.
And so nobody has talked with them at all.
So in
But
other words,
they may choose just to be a vendor that has a pallet of them or whatever. And
so
they
we could purchase, the residents could purchase
them directly through
I
ODC.
see. Okay.
So yeah, there's been no discussion with them, just the possibility of a third-party vendor.
At like
as
a no profit or a minor profit or something. I mean,
Sure, something to cover their administrative costs, if they make 10 cents on them or something like that.
Do they sell them at other, like, household stores?
Yeah, so last meeting, Shane and I were listening to the discussion and I looked it up. Home Depot has it online. I'm sure it's sales specific, but if the city that they're in all of a sudden now puts it in their ordinance that, they're gonna be able to sell 5,000 of them, they probably start to have more on hand than what they normally do or whatever,
Price point could drop too.
Yeah, and you can order them online, like I say, I'm guessing 7 out of 10 people, don't like, it depends on the time of the year, right? Because you're always looking into a crystal ball and saying, when do we start doing leaf pickup? Sometimes you hit it, sometimes you're a week late, and when you're a week late, there's not as much stuff out there when you hit it right on time, you know, because people aren't patient, and it's just as easy for them to throw it in the back of their car or on the trailer and go dump their bags at the compost site or whatever, you know. And so,
So is
some,
it, does any of your staff work weekends, or are they willing to work weekends?
nobody works weekends as of now. The only people that do are the people that are associated with the Parks Department that have to go and check the shelters that are being rented out and or the zookeepers.
But our city staff works nights and weekends with the snowfall.
Yes, that's overtime based.
Well, I guess my question is would it make sense to allow them to use their garbage bins on, like, have it on the street corner on Saturday morning, and we'll pick it up once a month for 2 months or 3 months? Does
I
that
don't
make
know
sense?
if that might be a case where it might gum up the trucks. You know, I'd hate to leave.
And
I don't know that it will. I think it'd be okay,
Oh, really? Okay.
but, yeah, it would be an overtime based piece then, you know.
Well, that's the cost of doing business. You know,
Right.
sometimes we gotta weigh that. But if it's a case where we're getting rid of 1 day a week by going with a 4 10-hour shift, then that 5th day, even though it is
Sure.
overtime, that could be an option too, instead of a Saturday or Sunday. You know, an optional day for someone to come in.
The only unfortunate part to that piece is that majority of the time currently with our current setup, a lot of times you're stopping and you're picking up anywhere from 12 to 20 bags. Now you're gonna go with a 96-gallon cart. In theory, you're probably gonna pick up 3 bags of leaves.
And then how do you know that there's leaves in there? So you got one and then someone puts out their garbage. So that might be a little bit challenging. You know, I don't want to lose the service at all, because there are, even if it is just a smaller percentage of residents, there are some property owners who have been paying property taxes for 50, 60 years who they don't have the means physically or mechanically or whatever it is to go to the compost facility. I do agree that we are fortunate to have 2 compost facilities, but it is one of those where this is a great service for a certain segment of the population who I think potentially deserves to have this service. So whatever we gotta do, if it is a case where you gotta buy leaf bags anyway, there is a cost. Obviously the cost is lower than what the paper bags are, or whatever you wanna call them, biodegradable bags, but it's only a 1 or 2 time a year process. So, I mean, it isn't a major expenditure to kind of have a small cost saving, or cost sharing is with that, as far as I'm concerned, as long as we don't lose the service.
Well, and our recommendation is too different than what we're currently doing. It would be a call for service, you know, so
Which
we
would
can
be-
put together a schedule and simply go to those addresses versus now, you know, we're following routes associated with, in theory, garbage truck routes, or garbage pickup routes, you know, so.
Which, yeah, I would be fine with that.
It'd be like that brush pickup, all in.
Well, our brush pickup is the same principle, where
Right.
it's by the routes, but,
Yeah.
so we could switch everything over to a call-in service provided.
Which is not a problem, you know, because it's still remedying the situation, but it's,
The phone
I
would go, I mean,
What's that?
the phone would be crazy, you know, but you could easily provide, I mean, the bad part is, you know, you live in Thad's neighborhood and you called it in, and Thad didn't call it in, well, you're not gonna drive past his pile because you're right there, right, you know, and so.
Well, could that potentially create the problem, well, why bother going to the compost site, I might as well just leave it out. They're gonna end up having potentially more stops.
Well, but it would have to be called in.
Right. But you can fill up a day picking up extra.
I was just gonna mention that, you know, it could potentially be submitted online, but there again, it's very convenient and you might get a lot more
You might as
requests
well
that
take
way.
a vacuum truck like Bort and just start.
Well, but that was part of the discussion, you know, obviously Joe is associated with that because of being there for years, and he said we could never get the city done in 2 weeks.
Oh, no,
with
no way.
with 3 vacuum
Oh, yeah.
trucks, you know, so it's not cost effective to provide that service.
I just hate to see a regular grass pickup or leaf pickup become end up being a regular service where everyone just calls in every week to pick up their grass piles?
We wouldn't do that. It would just be the twice a year.
Oh,
Spring
okay.
clean,
Oh.
I mean, that's my opinion, spring and fall
Yeah.
cleanup,
Oh,
just like we
okay.
currently do it. It wouldn't be, no, it wouldn't be a monthly thing.
Oh, okay, that sounds good.
Yeah, I don't think that any more people than do now would
Right.
really utilize it. Because I mean, I don't know when the next one is. I could go online, but if I'm, you know, picking up my leaves or brush or whatever, I kinda wanna get it out of my yard. And I got the means, I've got a pickup truck, so I just load it up. And I know now that if I make it to the compost site by noon or 3 o'clock or whenever it closes, then it's done and it's taken care of, you know.
I agree.
Then kid doesn't kick it or something, and I got leaves all over the yard, everything
Pick
else.
'em up again.
Yeah, pick them up again.
Is that
I don't know if to me, the 3 bags, I know what, I see the service, and I agree. I'd like to keep something, but 3 bags, does that really amount to?
No, it wouldn't be 3 bags. You could do whatever, but it would be using craft bags instead of the current garbage bags. So virtually what happens is
Okay, so the
Yeah.
numbers,
are unlimited as long as you buy the bags. I was going to Lee's point, I'm sorry, I was going to Lee's point of using your recycling cart or garbage cart to pick them up on Friday or Saturday, saying that you would be limited to virtually 3 bags into that recycling cart, or the 96-gallon cart. That's where I was, I'm sorry, I didn't explain
And then,
myself.
like I said, my only thought there is that it's still one guy driving around in a garbage truck or a one-man truck where you don't take multiple pieces of equipment, multiple manpower to do it. It's less administrative to do that. That's my only thought.
Yep.
But I agree, I mean, you can't, it'd be very tough to do. But I don't think we have to have a discussion on this, or I mean, an answer for this, do we?
No. No, we can bring this one back next month too.
Yeah.
You know, we're not gonna get, I think we got a lot of it done and, you know,
Yeah. we have more items too, I guess.
yeah, so,
Well, for that, why don't we move on?
Sounds good.
Item 4, consider preliminary resolutions to resurface the following alleys that were recently inspected and found in poor shape. There's 5 of them. A, alley west of 18th Avenue North from Grand Avenue to High Street. B, alley north of High Street from 16th Avenue North to 17th Avenue North. C, alley north of Alton Street from 18th Avenue South to 19th Avenue South. D, the alley west of Elm Street and from Sherman Street to Chestnut Street. And E, the alley west of Elm Street from Chestnut Street to Beat Street.
So are
I-
these above and beyond the ones that we identified? Just kind of curious, how come these weren't identified at the time when we approved the preliminary resolutions for the other ones?
So these were identified as, so the alleys are in need of replacement, but the thought process behind them is that when we estimate budget for public works construction projects, we always include a contingency percentage. And so sometimes we utilize majority of that, sometimes we don't. And because the public works projects are essentially bonded dollars, that if at nearing the end of the construction season, if there's contingency funds left over, the alleys make great projects to pick off if it works out that way. So that's kind of the reason why they were being addressed separately, not part of a typical project. But there are those 5. Those 3, those are the locations on the northwest side of town. So here's High Street, West Grand Avenue, and then over by the hospital. There's this one from Sherman Street up to Mead Street. So those are the 5 locations, but that's kind of the thought process behind them, that they would be projects that would be, the preliminary resolution process would be passed and that would be taken care of, and then in the
If it's
event
there,
that
we do it.
contingency is available, it can be paid off.
I like the idea, I like the thought. The only thing that I'm just a little concerned about is that do we have to have a certain date or project date with these preliminary resolutions? You know, because that's one of the things with having a preliminary resolution as well as a final resolution, is that there is kind of a definitive aspect with it, not necessarily a time period per se, but there is definity with the fact that a project has kind of been identified.
Sure.
Now, again, like I said, I like the idea because this doesn't constrain us. It allows us to think outside the box and potentially utilize the resources in a better mechanism. But is there potentially anything that we would be not even putting ourselves up for liability, but just kind of almost having the cart in front of the horse through this process?
So I mean, it does signify, the resolution does signify the city's intent to look at it as a project. I mean, it's the first step towards it. And we've had several preliminary resolutions that I can recall that the council passed a resolution and the project was never done. It was never budgeted or whatever the case might be. So in the event that, you know, we can't get to it in the next 2 years, we could always bring it back for a new preliminary resolution at that time as well.
Sure.
So, and I think with the notice that goes out to the property owners, that it could be identified that way, that it's, you know, what these projects are and how they might get implemented.
To go back to Thad's point, didn't we approve 5 last month?
4 or 5, yeah.
I think it's 5, isn't it?
Were those done?
I think.
No, so those would be proposed to be budgeted in 2019.
That was
As
associated.
actual.
These would be there if we had the money, time,
Yeah.
and whatever to do.
And only if there was contingency funds available.
So the other ones were actually budgeted to do in 19 because of the
I
necessity
mean,
of doing it.
preliminary.
Yeah.
Draft.
So I have 2 things. One, the Quinto Creek project comes to mind, where we send out a preliminary resolution. 2 years later, we decide to do the work. Everybody forgets the timeline in which it happened, and then they come in and we got a full room of pissed off people. But the other aspect of knowing that the city is planning to do the work is that it gives me an opportunity to say, okay, I know this is gonna cost me some money. I better start putting away, like if you're gonna do the street out in front of my house, I'm gonna have to redo this, I'm gonna need to start putting away, so
Yep.
I just wanted
Oh, yeah.
to point it out, that time frame. To go back to Thad's point, is if you put it out there too far, I mean, the ready-to-go projects are good, but if it's too far, now you got a bunch of residents that are unhappy because they don't ever remember getting a letter sent in the mail. Because I believe we only have to send out notice to the property owners of the preliminary resolution once we approve it.
Right, so within a couple weeks of approval for the preliminary resolution, a notice goes out.
And then what's the steps to inform them that we actually are gonna do the work prior to doing the work?
So if it's something that's happening that very next year, we usually have an open house for the project. You know, so through the design process, we can adjust the design before the design is complete, if there's any issues. And then we have the pre-construction walkthrough, which usually occurs a couple weeks before, 2 to 4 weeks before the project starts. We walk the project, the property owners can come out, we can look at everything with the plans, answer any of their final questions. Usually with the preliminary resolutions with that notice, people call in and they say, well, what's the timeline, what's this all about, what's the assessment, there's all those questions.
Do we have a way to re-inform them of the I mean, do we send out letters for the walkthrough? Do we send out letters for the engineering phase of it?
Yeah, so the open house, it's, everybody's invited to it along the project, same with the pre-construction walkthrough. So the challenge would be is if, okay, we have the preliminary resolution today, well, it's 2 years that goes by before we'd actually get to it. That's where the challenge would be, because there would definitely be a gap. And the alleys probably won't need the open house aspect of it. There won't be much of a design, if anything. So it'll just be a removal construction would be really quick too. So
Yeah,
as
which
far
is
as inconveniences and those sorts of things.
Like I said, I'm just looking at how do we inform the public,
Sure.
you know, especially on alley. How do we? On an alley?
So with the preliminary resolution, it'll be noticed
Yep.
with that. So if it's approved, the notice will go out for that. And I guess it'll just be another notice that goes out before the work is done.
Okay.
So it'd have to be identified that, hey, we've got a window of time that we can put it in the schedule, there's contingency funds available. Both of those things have to line up in order to be able to accomplish these sorts of projects.
Okay, thank you, that, just wanted to clarify.
Sure.
I'll move to pass a preliminary resolution
I'll
for these
second.
5. Do we want,
I think we can do all 5,
Yeah.
A, B, C, D, and E.
if somebody pulls one out, to pull one out?
I'll second the motion to approve all 5.
Okay, any further comment? Hearing none, committee will vote. All in favor respond by aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. 5, consider policy to allow the city engineer to authorize and issue permits to property owners to occupy the right-of-way for sprinkling systems and irrigation conduits.
Apologize for not having this in the packet, but. So this is something that seems to be coming up more and more often, and I guess I'm not exactly sure why, but primarily irrigation lines. You know, with the projects next to the river, that's one aspect of it. But then also having a permit process in place that covers temporary use of the right-of-way. I mean, we've got what's called an excavation permit. Well, if a contractor needs to put up construction fence around the work site, and that goes into the right-of-way, it's a temporary encroachment, but technically something that needs to be looked at. The city needs to be made aware of it, make sure that, you know, it doesn't infringe on any vehicle traffic, those sorts of things. There's a few other things in here. One that's somewhat recent is the bike share program, and having private property out in the public right-of-way, and just having some sort of acknowledgement of that, being aware of it, being able to apply any conditions to that. That one's not such a big deal because they're movable. And so really it's more of a look at trying to make sure that we've got a permit process that aligns with, more closely with the things that are going on out there. Certainly we cover all the excavation stuff, and then there's this gray area with occupying or encroaching on the right-of-way. And so this document here is kind of a draft format of basically what the following state statutes, what it would entail, where an applicant would apply for a street privilege, and that's where they would say, this is what I'd like to do, and then if that is appropriate, then an occupancy permit would be able to be issued for that, along with any other conditions. It's just a bit cleaner in the permitting process, and it's kind of breaking up this overarching excavation permit into a second category of encroachments of private property in the right of way.
So this is something that your department already kind of does, in a way?
Yeah, somewhat. There's also like where we have the irrigation lines, where we bring those into committee for review and approval of those. So it's kind of like I said, it's kind of somewhat of a gray area that we'd like to get cleaned up. And you know, there's a lot of property owners that have sprinkler heads in the right of way, and that's something we deal with on all of our projects. And even this will be difficult to you know, encompass those sorts of things, but you know, with all of our projects, we notify them that, hey, any of your sprinkler heads in the right of way need to be pulled out. Anything in the temporary easement area on private property, we ask that they flag them, so that, you know, we'll try to protect them we'll replace them if we damage them, sort of thing, but anything in the right of way is subject to, it's gonna get torn out when we come through and regrade the boulevard. They can certainly pull those out ahead of time, but, so it's those sorts of things.
I guess I don't have.
I don't have a problem with it myself either. I'll move to adopt a policy to allow the engineer to authorize and issue permits.
I'll second, but you got something, Lee?
You know, and I apologize, I realize it's getting late, but my question is who's gonna handle all this information?
Well, so like I said, it's stuff that we kind of deal with today. There isn't necessarily a formal process for it, but we should have a cleaner per statute type process for it. Like I said, we have an excavating permit, which we've used in a lot of cases to cover these sort of instances where, say like, an example would be the hospital. They need to put a crane out in 3rd Street to lift some equipment onto the roof of the hospital. So, okay, we'll use the excavation permit. They're not excavating anything, but they're occupying the right of way. We need to see a traffic control plan, make sure it's safe. How long are they gonna occupy it for? Is it 4 hours, 8 hours, a week? So we cover it that way. The irrigation lines, that's a little bit different because it's a private asset. We bring those in. That's something that's going to stay there permanently, crosses the street. We've brought those in to the committee for review and approval of those.
I think what Lee is asking is how much work is this gonna make you guys, and I think it's probably gonna make you less work, because you're gonna have it more organized.
Yeah, that's essentially what it is. I mean, some of these, we really need to be documenting all these cases. I mean, we have to review them anyway. And
And instead of chasing everything down, now it's in one nice.
and we had, like for the irrigation lines, we have a form that looks very similar to this that we've used. We drafted it just for that one particular case. This would encompass that, so among other things, other than just irrigation lines.
How many of these do you anticipate getting per month?
Only a couple.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I just compiling more information on, obviously, we're not very good at.
But then that could also kind of benefit us moving forward if someone did have irrigation or sprinkler system and we didn't know that, and somehow they didn't know that, or something happened and we're tearing stuff out, we could actually have a database. Do you have a property database type of a program that you?
Yeah, all the permits that get filled out, all the excavation permits, they go through the MyGov application, the same program that the community development uses for all the building permits.
And this is something you're gonna administer?
Yeah, I mean, that's something we're doing already.
It's
Essentially,
cleaner.
it's just,
Yeah.
it's kind of
Okay.
it's a gray area that this kind of cleans up.
Yeah, I'm sorry, where were we at? I apologize.
Motion on the floor in a second.
Motion and second, yep. If there's any further discussion, hearing none, committee will vote. All in favor, respond by aye. Aye, opposed, ayes have it. 6, review where parking regulation changes necessary to accommodate traffic changes on 16th Street South from Riverview Expressway to Clyde Avenue. From East Riverview Expressway, I don't know if I said that or not, east, Clyde Avenue.
So the draft language for the ordinance is attached. Basically, this is the improvements to the pavement marking and signage on 16th Street for Lincoln High School. That was an item that was previously brought before the committee and was approved to make those modifications. And this is more of just the housekeeping of getting the ordinance up to date with
This is to do what we did already.
Yeah, so
Honestly.
we just restriped it later last week, middle of last week. And so there's some parking, limited term parking areas on the east side of 16th Street that are being moved to no parking. And then there's one other inconsistency we saw on the west side that we were just cleaning up in that area. So there's three sections that are being edited. One's no parking at all times. And then there's removal of limited time parking along the east side of 16th Street. And this one. And then a correction on the 2-hour parking on 16th Street, the west side, from what was previously or currently Pepper Avenue to Grove Avenue. It's just been adjusted from Clyde Avenue to Grove Avenue. Just a couple minor adjustments. We restricted parking on the west side of the street during school days. That's in place today. That's going to remain. Primarily just the removal of parking on the east side.
So there is parking on the west side of 16th Street then, or?
There is outside of school days, school times, 7:30 to 4:30 on school days.
So 7:30 AM to 4:30 PM, there's no parking on either side of the road?
Correct.
Okay.
And this was something that was brought up.
So this is maybe a year ago?
Oh, at least let's say that.
Yeah. So
I don't even remember.
what was the idea of taking away the parking on the east side from the entrance to the exit of the parking lot?
So the impetus for looking at restriping and re-signing that section of roadway was the changes that the school district were performing with East Junior High being closed, and then those students going to Rams on the west side, and then a bunch of students going to Lincoln High School. And so they were looking at so many additional buses and so many more passenger vehicles in a given day. And so we reviewed the traffic conditions out there as they were prior to that change. And then as of today, all those students have been reallocated to that. So the pavement markings and signage are meant to help address some of those additional traffic issues.
So this was actually brought forth by the school board that
It
wanted
was,
this?
yeah.
It looks good too. It makes sense when you're out there driving too.
Yeah, I don't know. I remember being a student at Lincoln High School, and if you didn't get there early enough, you were parking behind the hockey rink.
Sure.
You know what's interesting?
That's on the street, that's on the street though.
That's what I mean. They're eliminating all that parking on the street all the way down
To Pepper.
to Pepper.
Yeah, so south of Pepper on the east side, there'll still be parking.
Right.
So the biggest thing what happened is the only part that you lost there is between the driveways on the student parking.
Which is 20 spots, right?
Yeah, but what we did is now to maintain traffic flow, virtually the center line of the road, I don't know if you've seen it since Thursday, we've been over there. So the center line of the road is moved over like 4 feet to the east. And there's virtually a dedicated left turn lane to go into the bus parking lot and the student parking lot, so you can maintain traffic flow going south.
Okay.
So that's the reasoning why we had to eliminate the parking on the east side of the road, was because virtually that northbound traffic lane is 4 feet off the face of the curb now.
Mhm.
If you bought a parking lot parking pass, you could park in the parking lot.
I was cheap. I was
$20
cheap.
I think.
And I was in good
I
shape.
think it was cheap.
But, no, like I said, not being up to date with how this came about, that's why I was
Sure.
questioning.
No,
If it was the school district's recommendation, and I haven't been there since Thursday, so.
It gets
Driving on it
confusing
just
with
makes
all the
sense. It was like, when I saw it too, I was like, boy, this should have been done years ago. It just makes sense.
used to be 1,600 kids in that school.
Need a motion on that?
I make a motion.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
I'll second.
You move to do it?
Yes.
Yep,
Ed? I'll second it. Or you-
Oh, that's
okay.
good.
Motion second to approve number 6 here. All in favor, respond by aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. 7, review and consider approval of the qualified low bidder for the 2018 sewer lining project.
So the 2018 sewer lining project includes about a half mile of sewer main lining and then a couple manhole rehabilitations. One of the primary reasons of looking at this contract for this year was the East Grand Avenue project coming up for next year. And the hazardous soil that was found in the Phase 1 and Phase 2 investigations on that corridor showed a high propensity for encountering it between 3rd Street and Garfield. So that's the section of sanitary sewer that we're proposing to line with this project to mitigate the expense of digging it out and removing it and hauling it to the landfill. Sanitary is the deepest utility out there, and we'd be replacing it anyway, and so it's actually a cost-effective option to do the lining, and doing it ahead of time it'll just make it easier, one less contractor in the way when next spring comes. There's a couple other locations south of Chestnut Street on 10th, 11th, and 14th, and then there's a 2-segment section down by Daly Avenue and Riverview Lane, just south, kind of goes underneath the expressway there. So that was a section of sanitary sewer that we had a cave-in, a sinkhole that was created earlier this year. That spot land's been put in to repair that section, but the rest of the line is leaking quite a bit, and so it's something that needs to be addressed. So we've got 3 bids. The low bidder, parent low bidder is Terra Engineering and Construction Corporation in the amount of $124,662.50. Based on the preliminary review of all the documents, they appear to all be in place with the bid submittal, and it would be our recommendation to approve Terra Engineering in that amount. And we check on the budget ahead of the meeting, and I believe there's upwards of $150,000 available. There's a couple things in this proposal, or in this bid from Terra Engineering, that seems to be a little bit on the high end for the manhole rehabilitation, and so we might postpone that particular work for a future date. But
As far as the actual mains that we're gonna be lining, are some of them, are they all in structural decent repair? I guess, cause what we're looking at is I&I issues, that's why we're slip lining these, right?
I&I, or in the East Grand Avenue case, the hazardous material.
So with East Grand Avenue, instead of replacing the sewer pipe, we're not digging down, in other words. So we're not disturbing anything. So therefore, in lieu of replacing an older pipe, we're slip lining the pipe for East Grand Avenue because we don't want to do any disturbing of whereas the other sewer pipes, sewer mains that we're going to be slip lining, are they older? Are they ones that we got a brand new street that we just paved over the top of them, that we didn't replace the utilities, or what is the purpose of?
So they're primarily I&I related. The other case where we would use a lining method is if it's extremely deep. It's really a cost effectiveness standpoint, and how it times with the street reconstruction project. So there are no other street reconstruction projects identified for these locations in the next five years. And so if the pavement isn't being taken off, it's a diggable depth, 12-ish feet, then this is the method that's cost effective to do. If we're taking the pavement off, it doesn't pay. You open cut it, dig it out, replace it, and call it good.
How often do we televise? How often does a sewer main get televised in a rotating fashion?
I'm not sure of the exact schedule that they're on. I know that there was a goal at one point of getting to once every 5 or once every 10 years. 5 years. So I don't think we've gotten through all of them yet, but they're working on it. So
I think they're on year 3 of that or 2.
sure.
Do we have our own camera, or do we?
Yeah, so they have a newer camera that was recently replaced, so they can get through a lot more material. I guess that's part of the issue, is having to go through and do an extensive cleaning prior to, and then trying to navigate some of these pipes that proper equipment, they can go through more material with less cleaning, and so they can do it faster. They can get video with it, reports get generated, we view them all from our office. All gets mapped on GIS, and so it's a good process.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with going with the lowest bidder. In fact, I'll make a motion to go with Terra Engineering for the 2018 sewer lining project.
And I'll second.
Motion and second to go with Terra Engineering for the sewer lining project. All in favor, respond by aye.
Aye.
Opposed, ayes have it. Number 8 referrals.
I do have an addition to add to look into potential 2019 for stormwater, and looking at 1 Mile Creek. 1 Mile Creek is designated as a stormwater channel, and over the last couple days, with the amount of rain that we got, and actually the last couple weeks here, there's been several different times where there has been and I talked to Joe actually about this prior, actually maybe a month and a half ago, but I got on my phone, I'm not going to show it now, but I've got video of both culverts on the 1 Mile Creek corridor over the top of Airport Avenue that are filled. I mean, the water it's so much water going through there that, and that's the nice thing with having a stormwater utility fund, is that we can leverage monies for that. I don't think we've got anything budgeted for it this year, but that's one thing that I'm gonna look at for budgetary purposes, for whatever we can potentially do with that. I don't know. A lot of that water that comes down that storm corridor comes off of 8th Street and all the asphaltic surfaces, and actually extending all the way to 16th Street by the corner of, across the street from Lincoln High School there. So there's a tremendous amount of water that can go through there. And if we keep on having these 100-year rains every other day, it's not 100-year rain anymore. So it's adversely affecting property owners along that corridor. And interestingly enough, we do have a project that we're going to be looking at just south of Lincoln Street, or we're already engaged in, I should say, a project for making the pond deeper along that, just in between Lincoln Street and 2 Mile. But maybe it's the case that we, kind of take a look at the whole corridor as a whole and see what else we can.
Because I have a constituent up by 16th there that's been complaining about, and I think he's talked to Joe too Joe Terry a few times about how stagnant it has been. So maybe a good flushing that we just got might have been pretty good, but they've been complaining about how it gets smelly, and maybe that whole thing needs to be looked at.
Yeah.
I agree.
And with it being designated as a stormwater avenue, correct? Am I correct on that?
It's still a navigable waterway, so a state type jurisdiction on it, but I mean, it does convey stormwater primarily.
Mm-hmm. So utilizing stormwater revenues to at least take a look at to see what we can address it would be feasible on that. We wouldn't be spending levy money on it. If it
Right,
wasn't
yeah, it
levy.
would be eligible for those sorts of funds.
So that's what I wanna add on, and it might not, there isn't an easy fix today, but, again, that's one thing that I'm gonna be looking at in terms of budgetary allocation, so.
And then just on item number 22 that Shane had put forth, so that has been sent out for some comments, so it's circulating right now with PD and some other city staff to see what some of the comments are that come back on that, so hopefully it'll be together for next month.
Sounds good. I guess a comment on that, it seems like, and not just because of this, but it seems like with a lot of referrals, they seem to get bogged down in city staff for comment. And I think in years past, these things used to be put on committee, and if staff had comments, they could come to the committee and supply them instead of us always seem to be waiting for city staff. It's not a big issue, but it just is, we've been waiting how many months now? And it's like, it's just a parking thing, and it just seems like our government is getting so slow and bogged down here. And I brought up last council meeting about, where's the stop and the cog in the wheel here, because, we can't seem to get anything done quickly, because it just seems to sit and have to be talked about, and I'd just like to see things get moved a little quicker maybe, and not spend so much time waiting for city staff to give their recommendation, because I value city staff's opinion, but it doesn't necessarily, if the city staff says that's not a good idea, it doesn't necessarily mean that we don't think it's a good idea anyways. And so I'd like to see things move a little quicker, just not see it get bogged down in city staff. If we get government to speed up a little bit.
Well, and not only not necessarily waiting for city staff, but I do agree with you, and were you able to read that full article on the agenda?
Have not yet.
Yeah, it's a case where anybody on the governing body can force items onto any particular agenda. Now, if we've got a policy where it's got to go through committee first, rather than going onto the regular council agenda, then that's the way that it's got to go. But even the mayor does not have the authority to remove or block anything that this body, the body as the city council has. If anybody so chooses to bring forth business, that business must be addressed.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's being blocked or anything, but I think we're working on month number 3 now, and it seems like a long time for a parking thing, So that's just my thoughts. On any
And this,
agenda or on any item.
and this would be a case, I think, maybe not to belabor the point, but sometimes it seems like there's too many departments to go through.
Right.
I mean, before we get here,
Right,
instead of maybe less,
maybe we just get on the agenda.
maybe
and
I
city
should say
staff
less
can-
input, I'm trying to think of the right way, because we value the input of the staff.
Absolutely, and expertise.
But somehow to get it to the committee to say yes or no.
Move along a little quicker. Whether it be, Lee's item with, with garbage and recycling, or drug paraphernalia with Deep Cove. It seems like we seem to get lost and bogged down a little bit, where I think staff seem to participate more in committee meetings over the years, or years ago, where I see less of that now. Even at council meetings, there's less city staff at council meetings, so there's less involvement. Seems like it is being all done through the day at whatever, whenever there's opportunity, and then finally, once everybody gets weighed in, then it can go to committee, where I think it's backwards, I think it should go through committee, and if staff have the input, then it needs to become a priority at that point, and then that input can be given, not driven by staff, but it needs to be driven more at the council level. Just my thoughts. Just like to see things move a little quicker.
All right,
We've been accused of hindering development, so let's not be accused of bogging down government and making it so slow.
I agree with you 100%.
well, we're to item 9, that's adjourn. I'll move we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, respond by aye. Aye. Both ayes have it, the meeting's adjourned at 8:56.
Almost. Well, gentlemen.